Now we're going to start looking at the different elements that go into a picture. And since we're always imaging, or mainly imaging, the world that we know, I'm going to have us look at the different kingdoms of nature. Now the first kingdom of nature is the earth kingdom, the mineral kingdom. And so that's would be the hills and mountains and water. Of course, on the earth there's going to be plants, and that will be our second kingdom that we're going to be looking at how to do the different parts of. But let's start with a hillside. Now here is a very bucolic scene of a hill with a stream coming through it, and the tree, I'll be showing you how. This hillside is more perhaps pictorial. It's more almost like an illustration, but it still shows the movement. Of course, the hills have these wonderful curves to them. This image is inspired, I guess, by the California coast, where we have these wonderful hills coming down to the sea, and here we have the sea moving towards the land. Now, when we're doing a landscape image, there's a sense of perspective that comes. We don't actually teach perspective, certainly not to the young children, but the sense that the things that are furthest away are the things that we're going to be drawing first. And of course, the furthest away is the sky. And so I'm going to use yellow. Now, for the very young children, I find that yellow sky is, it's filled with light and it's filled with sunshine. Children always say, but the sky is blue, make the sky blue. But you'll find often a blue sky is much cooler looking, and it's very, very hard often for the children to keep it that very, very delicate light blue. And with the yellow sky, it just seems to glow in the warmth of summer, which is, the spring and summer is the age that they are at right now. And so we're going to start with that. So the things that are furthest away in the drawing are at the top of the drawing. So of course the sky is there. And then we can bring in, let's see, maybe I will do a nice hill here. So I'm going yellow first, and as you've experimented with your colors, you'll find it's a different green if you put blue down first and then add yellow than if you put yellow down first and then add blue. So I'm just putting yellow down because that's the green that I want to work with. And then I'm going over it with the blue. And also the colors of things that are further away are going to be lighter because there's that atmosphere between the person who's viewing the scene and the great distance. And so we're going to keep this very delicate. Now maybe there'll be another hill in the foreground. So you can be practicing this too. Just nice curves using Papa Bear. You've had some practice now working with. Now I'm leaving a little bit of sort of a whitish color here because I think I might want to bring the stream around. And then I'm going to go over that with maybe even a little bit more intense. Now. Now I'm going to take this stream from back here, and it'll be very, very pale. And I'm using Mama Bear Blue. Very light, always keeping it light. You can always get darker later after you've made sure that you're getting the effect you want. And as the stream is coming closer to us, you'll see that I'm pressing a little bit harder. And keep that flowing gesture. And then you can make it go off the page, but don't make it go off with a really intense color. This is something that I hope to remember to mention in the other parts of this tape when we're coloring, drawing people, animals, that you want to have the entire person or animal or object in the picture as much as possible. Now with nature, sometimes you can have a tree that's disappearing off the top, or as I say, this stream that's disappearing here. But you don't want to ever have just a portion of something seen and the rest off the page, because it's very disconcerting to the children. I've often had children comment when they don't like to see, you know, half of a horse or half of a person, or the people's legs off the bottom. And so for that same reason, let's try to keep this stream. And then you can go over it with a little wavy gesture, just to show that it's flowing. And then it just goes off, but very, very lightly, so that, okay, and then in the foreground here, I'm going to make a nice hill that's much, much greener. And I made a mistake there. You can see my scratch paper went under my pad and it made this line. That's why we have the pads, to make sure that they cushion as much as possible, but this one made the line, so I have to go over it a little bit to hide that. Now we'll go over this and get a nice bright green, because this is in the foreground. Now some children, when they're coloring, you'll find they barely touch the page with the crayon, and it's very wispy and dreamlike and very pastel. You can barely see the colors. And I've had other children, when they've colored, they have put so much color onto the page that the color starts to shift around, because the paper can only take so much wax. And with the layers of wax, when they just press so hard in there, that actually the reds of the page almost end up looking like the red of the crayon, and the greens and the blues and such. Whoops. So this is just, there we go. Okay, so here's one. Now in the background, I left a space there that I thought we could do some mountains. And this is sort of a mixture of a lot of different things in this one drawing. I'm going to take a scratch piece of paper. Now, you might remember earlier when I was showing you about coloring with the bands, that if you press harder at one side of the crayon of Papa Bear and have the other side of Papa Bear almost lifting off of the paper, that you're going to get an effect that's shaded, where it's much more intense here and it just disappears away. So that's what we're going to be doing to draw these mountains. Now, children often will draw mountains as a zigzag, like a sawtooth, but very few mountains actually appear that way. So again, with Papa Bear, and this is in the distance, with a lot of atmosphere between those distant mountains and myself as the viewer, and so I'm going to keep it very light. Now I can go over that with a little bit of red, trying to very carefully go over the same blue, and this just makes it a little bit purplish. Purple Mountain Majesty. And you see now that there's all of this atmosphere here in the valley before. Now, since I have my stream right there, I might want to put another little hill off in the distance there. And I pressed a little too hard, but it's not bad. All right, so these are land formations. And as I showed you this one before, here we have the sea, and I did different layers to show the tide coming in, getting a little bit lighter towards the beach. This sky, you see I did blue, and I left a few areas that were white, and I might have gone over them with a little bit of yellow, I guess, for the clouds. You see it's more intense in the foreground because you don't have atmosphere to make it a more diffused color. And here I chose to show the horizon line. You just play with that.